Hey gang, Stephen Marshall, KYLandlordlaw.com with another update for you. And today I'm going to talk about the new requirements that go into effect on Monday for business openings and reopenings. Most of you all in the property management world have stayed open, but it's actually going to get harder for you to stay open. The governor has announced 3 waves of openings that will take place during the month of May. But with those new openings and reopenings, new requirements have been placed on businesses. So it's actually going to be harder for you to be open right now because the governor has laid out this set of minimum requirements that you have to meet in order to stay open. If you're not following these requirements, there's actually a website and a phone number that your employees or your customers can call and report you. And theoretically you could get shut down. So I wanted to go over these requirements with you, and then at the end, after we've talked about the requirements for you keeping your office open, I want to go through amenities a bit and talk about the phases of reopening them and kind of where they stand and what you probably need to do there. And then at the end, I'll give a quick update on evictions and that type of thing, because I can tell you that's a real cluster right now with the courts trying to get that stuff figured out. So here's the minimum requirements that the governor has laid out for businesses to meet. Most of them, or some of them, you've already been doing, but I want to lay them out for you so that you're clear about what's expected of you come Monday, May the 11th. So the first one is that you are to continue telework where possible. Okay, anytime that you have workers who can operate over the phone or over the internet, working remotely from home, they want you to continue to do that. Okay, that is step number 1. Step number 2 is they're asking that you phase in return to work. Okay, office based businesses are encouraged to have no more than 50% of their employees physically present on any given day. Okay, so they want you to continue to allow telework. The Family Medical Leave Act, you're required to give certain sick leave days and family leave days, and so they encourage you to encourage your employees to take advantage of those days and work from home, so that no more than 50% of your employees are present on any given day, physically present in the office. That's requirement number 2. Number 3 is that we still have to enforce social distancing. Okay, if you have employees and customers in your office, they're supposed to be 6 feet away at all times unless closer interaction is absolutely required to carry out the task. Okay, now, absolutely required to carry out the task is primarily contemplated as being healthcare workers. Okay, that's not necessarily contemplated as being signing leases. Okay, so don't be up in people's face and in their space when they're signing leases. And as we'll see, we want to do as much of that electronically as we can, but we'll get to that later. The 4th requirement: limit face-to-face interaction. That's with employees themselves and with your customers. So we have to sign a lot of documents in the rental industry. The governor wants that done with social distancing requirements being maintained. Okay, now the best option for you is to do all this electronically. Okay, there's a number of software models out there that you can use to have your leases, your applications, all of that stuff signed electronically, and then you can process it without actually coming into contact with your customers and with your clients and with your potential renters and your current renters. So we want to maintain social distancing and limit face-to-face interaction as much as possible. Use technology to make that happen, because with some creative thinking, you can do that fairly easily. Now, so far, most of what I've said has been recommended, if not required already. Okay, maybe not the 50% employee rule, but basically all of those first four things have already been highly recommended. The next one is new, okay, and that has to do with masks and PPE, okay, physical protective equipment. First is the universal employee mask requirement. The governor has said that businesses must ensure to the greatest extent practicable that your employees wear a cloth mask, okay? You don't have to have surgical masks, you certainly don't need an N95 mask, but you need to require that your employees wear a cloth mask for any interactions between coworkers or out in common areas of your office, okay? Now, if you have employees that have a separate office and they're in their separate personal office, they don't have to wear a mask while they're in there. But when they're interacting with other workers, when they're interacting with customers, or when they're in the common areas, they need to wear a mask. And they've also said that you need to provide these masks at no cost to the employees. Okay, and there's a website that you can go to instruct your employees on the proper use of the masks. And they encourage you to do that as well. Second, with regard to the mask, you encourage your customers to wear masks, okay? You may refuse service to any person who's not wearing a mask, okay? So if you get an applicant who comes to your office, a current resident who comes to your office, if you're opening up, you can require that they wear a mask, okay? You don't have to do that, but you're encouraged to do that. Make your own decision as to whether you do or not. And then finally, when it comes to PPE, you must ensure that any employee whose job duties include touching items that are going to be touched by other people, whether that's money or documents or computers, they are to wear gloves and replace those gloves regularly. Okay, now it doesn't say replace them after every touch, it just says replace those gloves regularly. So you need to provide those as well. So that's the fifth requirement. Then, sixth requirement, you've already been doing this, supply adequate hand sanitizer, which has 60% alcohol content or higher, for both employees and customers, and make sure that it's available in all of your high traffic areas, okay, and for all your high touch services. You are supposed to continue to encourage routine hand washing and sanitizing by employees and customers. Seventh, they've asked you to restrict your common areas. This is within your offices, okay? Lobbies, waiting rooms, break rooms, lunchrooms, whatever. Restrict access to those areas to make sure that people can social distance while using those areas, and make sure there's no congregating in those areas in a way that would break the social distancing requirements, okay? They've also asked that you structure your office to minimize traffic flow that would bring people into contact with each other, okay? So if you can configure your office in a way that kind of keeps people from moving through the same spaces, they've encouraged you to do that. 8, proper sanitation, and this refers to the actual office itself. You're required to sanitize frequently touched surfaces twice a day. So that's doorknobs, any payment machines, any shared computers, electronics, or devices, things like that. Any other surfaces that are frequently touched or used, sanitize them twice a day. Okay? Make sure that any workstations are cleaned regularly. And then if you find out you have an employee who has symptoms of COVID-19, make sure that they don't get to access any other areas, and that you restrict access to the areas that they've been working in, okay? Put a sign up that restricts access to that area, and then obviously get moving pretty quickly to sanitize and disinfect it. And the guidance is the contaminated area should be off limits for 24 hours, okay, to everyone except for essential personnel who are trying to clean and disinfect it. Number 9, this is a new one as well. Conduct daily temperature checks. Okay, you're required to have your employees undergo daily temperature checks. Now, they can do the checks themselves at home or at work. but it's got to be done before they come into work. The cutoff on temperature is 100.4 degrees. That's what the CDC has put out. Now, some states have been more strict than that. I know one state, I think it's Delaware, has made it 99.5. But I haven't seen anything in Kentucky that changes the CDC standard of 100.4. So if you get an employee who is 100.4 or higher, or that they're showing other symptoms of being sick, your instructions to them are two things. Number one, they have to go get tested. And then second, they are to quarantine at home if any illness is detected when they go get tested. And this is going to include employees that don't pass the temperature check at the beginning of the day, or anyone who gets sick during the workday. Okay, so that's temperature checks, that's new. And number 10, you're asked to create a testing plan. Okay, you ensure that any employee with symptoms gets tested immediately, and ensure that they're trained on how to isolate individuals that are suspected of having symptoms of the virus. If you have an employee that tests positive, you, as the employer, as the business, are to notify the health department and provide the employee's information, along with information of other employees or customers who came into contact with that employee. Okay, now that gets into some pretty tough situations. Okay, you're having to call a government agency and report your employee and report others who came into contact with them. Okay, now you make your own decision on whether you do that or not, but that is what you are being instructed to do by the governor's guidance to stay open. Requirement number 11, make special accommodations. To the greatest extent possible, create accommodations for employees and customers who are at the highest risk, okay, the most vulnerable populations. And I'll have a link to you for identifying those. There are folks that are over 65, those that have autoimmune issues, those that have diabetes, those that have liver issues. Those are kind of the at-risk populations for this virus. And to the extent possible, you want to create accommodations to deal with them and address them separately. Number 12, this one almost makes me laugh even to read it. You're supposed to designate a healthy at-work officer. Okay, one employee is your healthy at-work officer, and they are responsible for ensuring that your business complies with this guidance. So basically, you're making a hall monitor for all this stuff at your business, and this is supposed to be the person that if any other employees have questions about compliance, they are to go to this designated officer. So make sure you designate someone. I don't think that comes with a increase in pay. Sorry. 13th, we're getting to the end. You have to educate and train your employees on these new protocols. Okay? The training is supposed to be offered during regular business hours, so it's a paid training. Okay? No cost to the employee. They don't have to come in early or stay late for the training during the regular business hours. You've also been asked to put up appropriate signage throughout your office to inform employees and customers about your new practices and about good hygiene. Okay, so that would be social distancing, hand washing, that type of thing. And then the last requirement is contact tracing. Okay, we've kind of already mentioned this, but you are supposed to cooperate with public health officials to make sure that they are informed about who any of your employees have had access to or been around after they have COVID-19 symptoms or have tested positive. So you have to cooperate with local health officials to do this contact tracing so they can find out who's been exposed to the virus and who hasn't. So, that's fairly involved, and that starts on Monday. Those are the 14 minimum requirements that the governor's office has set forth to keep our offices open. Now, the question that everybody wants to know is, well, what does all this reopening mean for our amenities and our common areas? So I wanted to go through those really quickly. I know we're getting lengthy on the video here. But first, fitness centers. As businesses, commercial gyms aren't allowed to open yet. The thought is they'll probably open in May, but they're not, or excuse me, in June, but they're not allowed to open in May. So we probably are going to follow the governor's guidelines on that and keep our fitness centers closed for now, with the thought that they'll probably reopen next month. Business centers, if you have a computer room or something like that, I think you can probably open these back up under the same guidelines as your office, okay? You only allow enough people to go in your business center as can safely maintain social distancing guidelines, and make sure that you're cleaning and disinfecting the surfaces at least twice a day. So under that protocol, I think you can reopen your business center if you want to. Third, playgrounds. And this is one of them that I have the most trouble with. You know, playgrounds are outdoor areas that are primarily used by kids. And kids, the numbers are very clear, they are the least vulnerable segment of our population here. So it kind of seems to me like playgrounds ought to be open, okay, and people ought to be given the option of using them or not. But that doesn't seem to be what the state is thinking on this issue. At this point, campgrounds are still closed. Public playgrounds are still closed by city order in most places. So it's probably your safest play right now, no pun intended, keep your playgrounds closed. Now, that's going to be a tough ask, as you know, we have warm weather at our doors. Youth activities are still canceled, so kids are going to want to get out and play. They're going to want to get on your playgrounds. At this point, it's the safest play to follow the government's orders on that. Keep it closed. Fourth, basketball courts. Some of you have basketball courts at your facilities. Simply put, you can't play basketball and maintain social distancing. So those probably need to stay closed. Fifth, tennis courts. This is another tough one, another outdoor activity that you can do while social distancing and maintaining very minimal contact. But most cities have still extended their closures of tennis courts. So we probably need to follow that guideline at our community as well. And then I mentioned this one in the last video, pools, number 6. Public pools are not allowed to be open yet under the governor's instructions, okay? And that includes those at apartment communities. Now, certain cities have extended this closure throughout the summer. Lexington is one, Covington and Paducah. They will all not open their public pools the entire summer. Now, it's not yet clear whether those local orders apply to apartment community pools or not, or whether it's just their city-operated pools. So there's a possibility that your apartment community pool, even in those areas, could open later in the summer, but it's probably doubtful at this point. So that's kind of where we are on amenities. For the month of May, we keep our offices open if we follow these minimum requirements, but beyond our business centers or computer rooms, I don't think we can open up many of our amenities yet. Okay, now that may change in the coming weeks. You know, we'll just have to see how all of this stuff plays out, and I will certainly keep you informed on that. Couple last things. One, evictions. A task force has been created that is supposed to formulate a plan for reopening the courts. Okay, so that makes me hopeful that the courts are going to open on June the 1st as scheduled. I know the task force for district courts, and that's where evictions take place, that statewide task force is meeting today. I spoke this morning with a member of the task force. I've also been corresponding with our local judges this morning and sent a list of our concerns to them that have to do with getting the courts open back up and the issues that kind of are surrounding evictions once things do open back up. So that is kind of moving, albeit slowly, and I'll have updates as I know more on that. Certainly no decisions have been made at this point. They're just having their first meeting today. Next week, I'm going to have a new video on one very important thing you're going to need to do right now to make sure that you're ready to file an eviction as soon as possible whenever things open back up for them. So be on the lookout for that next week. Next week, we're also going to know May's rent numbers. Those should come out tomorrow, and so we'll have a sense nationwide of what things are looking like as far as rent payment. And then finally, got one more webinar coming up, May 19th. I'm doing a webinar on Kentucky's domestic violence law. A couple years ago, our state legislature basically designated certain domestic violence victims as a new protected class under fair housing law. And it gave these victims certain new rights, but also created some new remedies for landlords that would help protect your interests. So this webinar, I'm going to go into all the details. So make sure that you get signed up. It's really cheap, going to be a fantastic value for it. So, folks, I think that's it for today. Like I said, May rent numbers are going to come out tomorrow, so we'll have a better sense of what things are looking like, and I'll report back on those next week, along with something you need to be doing in the coming days, and it's going to require some work on your end, some research, so that you're ready to file an eviction once things open back up. That's it for now. Hope you're doing well. As always, smarshall@trippleslaw.com if you have any questions, or reach out to me on my cell phone. Hope you're doing well. Hang in there. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Take care.